The story I'm about to tell you happened to me a long time ago. I was only 6 years old at the time. It was close to my birthday, and my mother knew how badly I wanted a bicycle. I had had one when I was younger, but I had since outgrown it and wanted something more my style, I guess you could say. I rose that morning, just like any other morning. Walked into my living room of the small trailer that we lived in and ate my breakfast that my mother had prepared for me. Then with a smile on her face, she told me to go open the front door. As I reached the door and began to open it, the sunlight poured in. I was blind for a few seconds. As my vision returned to me, there it was. The most perfect bike I had ever seen. Everything I wanted, all wrapped in a neat little bow. No training wheels. Nothing to keep me safe. I was a big boy now, and I wanted to be treated like one. Free to make my own mistakes and fall when I needed to. With excitement, I jumped up and down, screaming and yelling like little boys do. I ran out, and my mother and my oldest brother tried to teach me how to ride a bike without training wheels. His lessons were, let's just say, simplistic. Just get on and pedal. And don't turn the handlebars. So simple. But after a few minutes of falling repeatedly, I took off one final time. And I got it. I felt the ground collapse under my tires. The force of the pedals. The sound of the chain going over the gears. The feeling of freedom. It was intoxicating. And I fell in love with it. I rode that bike every day, for hours. Until one day, I was riding along up and down the dirt road that ran through the trailer park. back and forth. My brother was watching me, of course. Make sure I didn't get hurt or nobody tried to kidnap me. My mother was so overprotective. But it's not like she didn't have good reason to be. I was riding straight down the dirt road, which ended in a wall of trees. I wanted to push myself and see how fast I could really go. So beginning at the very start of the road, I took off, pedaling hard and fast, looking down to make sure my foot didn't slip off the pedal until I had reached maximum speed, looking up in excitement, which soon turned to horror. At the end of the road, there it was, standing just behind the tree line. It was a tall, thin figure who looked to tower at least 7 or 8 feet. He was dressed in a long black trench coat, though his sleeves revealed no hands coming out of them. His arms hung at his side, motionless. Atop his head was an old-style hat, a fedora if I'm not mistaken. His face was wrapped in bandages, black bandages, and he had on a pair of old-style goggles with black frames and black lenses. The trench coat touched the ground, and I could not see any feet or anything like that. This figure stood, staring at me, quickly approaching it. This bike did not have brakes, so I instinctively put my foot down and tried to turn the bike sideways, just like I had seen people do in the movies. This ended very badly for me, of course. Being an inexperienced rider, I flipped my bike, tumbling, twisting, falling to the ground. My legs were intertwined in the frame. My head was under part of the handlebars, and my arm was pinned under me, leaving only one free. I glanced back at my house, hoping to see my brother rushing towards me, but he was gone. In fact, everyone was gone. It just was me and this creature. I looked back in the direction where I had seen this thing, and it raised its arm in a way I can only assume it was pointing at me, as its sleeve draped down over something, revealing no hand. It was as if it just had a stump that the material was pulled tight against. Then it started to move towards me in a slow, methodical style. Frantically, I started trying to free myself from my bicycle prison. What once was a source of joy and pleasure, now turned into a prison of horror and terror. After moments of struggling which seemed like hours, I finally had gotten up. Cuts, scrapes, all over my legs and arms. I lifted my bike upright and spun it around, facing in the direction of my house. I quickly mounted it and took off, taking one final look. Whatever that thing was, it was mere feet from me at this time, both arms stretched out like it was going to grab me. I pedaled as fast as I could and came to a screeching stop once I reached my trailer. Dropping the bike and not even caring to try to tie it up as I normally would, I bolted inside, slammed the door, locked it. My family was not there. I was confused. There's no way they would have ever left me alone, especially outside riding my bike. My eyes scanned the room for any sign of life besides my own, but there was none to be seen. The next thing I knew, I heard pounding on the door. Screaming. Knowing what was out there, I ran to my room, jumped into my bed, and pulled the covers tightly over my face. I was a child, and that was the best I could think to do. The pounding persisted. Getting more violent with each single strike, until I heard what sounded like the door crashing in. Slow and deliberate steps entering my room. Until they stopped right next to my bed. I felt a hand slowly sliding over the blanket until it was right over my face. I clenched my eyes shut, held my hands over my mouth, and was begging that this nightmare come to an end. The next thing I knew, the blanket was torn off of me. I screamed. Flailing my arms around, trying to hit whatever I could. And that's when I heard it speak. But it wasn't the demonic, callous, cold voice I was expecting. It was a sweet, comforting, confused voice. The voice of my mother. She asked me what was wrong, and when did I come inside. I finally gathered the courage to open my eyes and saw her warm, sweet face with nothing but concern. gazing upon me. She held me in her arms and started to comfort me as I began to cry, screaming, "Why did you leave me? Why were you going to let that thing get me?" It's been 20 years. I've never seen that thing again. But I still lie awake at night, wondering, what the fuck was that thing? And every time I pass by trees, sometimes I think I get a glimpse of it, pointing at me, watching me, and waiting.